Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om 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 Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody. Where did we leave yesterday? Or is there any? Huh?
Seeing the self in one's own self.
Huh?
Seeing the self in one's own self.
Where?
Second.
Where? Huh?
This needs lots of presentation.
Huh?
Ethereal.
Huh?
It is ethereal.
On what was the context?
Swamiji, Swamiji, we had spoken last that for the next 2-3 days we need to speak on the mind control.
Achha.
Yes.
Which chapter you remember? Huh?
I think it was chapter 6 or
Fifth and sixth.
Fifth and sixth.
Sixth of our
6.
Okay, sixth chapter, it deals with Jnana Yoga.
Jnana.
So there we found Yatha Deepo Nivasastu. Then at that time we were remembering about the Arati. As a lamp in a spot sheltered from the wind does not flicker, even such has been a simile used for the yogi of subdued mind, practicing concentration in the self. So we were remembering why, now we understand why Papa or Mataji introduced this. Immediately after the wicks are lighted, somebody will come and ensure that it doesn't get extinguished because of the wind. The glass, what do you call that, glass sheet or something, that is there to prevent. But here, nothing is needed to prevent. Because even when the wind comes, we will be able to stand erect.
Number 20, they have asked for self by the self.
This is 19. As a lamp in a spot sheltered from the wind does not flicker, Even such has been the simile used for a yogi. So that's what we are elaborately mentioning. So when the mind, absolutely restrained by the practice of concentration, attains quietude, and when seeing the self by the self, one is satisfied in the selves. Yatra parameta chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra devatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyati. We should be ensuring that it doesn't slip into academic exercise. So we try, whatever directions we get, we try. And see for ourselves whether these can be translated into our sadhana. The word is very, it's a tall talk. When the mind, absolutely restrained by the practice of concentration, attains quietude, and when seeing the self by the self, seeing the self by the self, seeing the self, S is capital, by the self, S is slower, means what? What does it mean? Because you are not referring to the text. Kindly think about it. The meaning is, when the mind, absolutely restrained by the practice of concentration, attains quietude, and when seeing the self by the self, one is satisfied in the self. What does it mean? Here, the two selves are given, no? Seeing the self by the self. Anybody gets any prompting? No, yes.
Swamiji?
Does it mean that when we are chanting Ram Nam mentally and we are trying to see or hear the Ram Nam which we are chanting mentally, so we are able to hear the mental chanting, so we are watching it. So does it mean that?
Yeah. The chanting entity and the witnessing entity, both are there, So the chanting entity is referred to as the small self. Witnessing entity is called the higher self. So the chanting self, when it becomes aware of the witnessing self, chanting stops. Putting it in another way, they have said, when seeing the self by the self, one is satisfied in the self. So we keep on chanting mentally Ram Nam. Which is witnessed. Witnessed in the sense, the awareness is there, the knowing principle is there. The knowing principle becomes aware of the chanting. So the moment the chanting self, chanting entity becomes aware of the witnessing entity, then the fusion takes place. This is the outcome, If we simply read, no. By this withdrawing the mind from external things, we are not going to some state of emptiness of mind. We are going to the infinite dimension of the divine within, and we find infinite delight in it. When Papa was explaining about dhyana, he did mention this. The mental chanting, at that time, when the mental chanting becomes effective, that means the mind does not go anywhere else. First we chant vocally, Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. When we practice this for a continue and try to experience the knowingly chanting. Otherwise the chanting goes on and the mind goes on elsewhere.
Swamiji, if we little act mentally and focus our attention on it with the chanting, slowly and steadily, with a pause in between, and at the same time realize the self, and we feel that, we are one with it. No doubt afterwards, sometimes just after the concentration of nearly 60 seconds or even more, the point of oneness comes there and stillness happens.
Quite right.
Is it coming?
That experience cannot be explained, but that pleasant feeling will develop in our mind.
Yes.
So from the vocal chanting, we try to graduate into the mental chanting. Even at the time of vocal chanting, if we become aware of the chanting becomes effective. I know that I am chanting, that stage. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Knowingly chanting. When we do that knowingly chanting process, automatically the tendency to go out gets arrested, as it were, and the concentration slowly develops. And when we try to enter into the mental chanting, the same practice is to be followed according to this sloga. Even here, knowingly chanting. Straight away to have this knowingly chanting, it will not happen probably. So better we try to start it, even if we are doing for 2 minutes or 5 minutes Ram Nam chanting. Let us try to chant it knowingly. That means no other thought will come. That is why Papa inserted this word. When you chant the name, you should know that you are chanting the name of one who is within you, who is making you to chant. So we are getting connected to the knowing principle. The moment this happens, the chanting entity becomes aware of the knowing entity. Apparently there are two, but it is one and only, but apparently they are two. So then the chanting entity in us, when the fusion takes place between it and the knowing entity, what happens is we have to experience. That is brought out here in the last word of this sloga. Pashyan Atmani Tushyati. Atman Atmanam. We are going to the infinite dimension of the divine within, and we find infinite delight in it. It can't be explained beyond that, no? because nobody is there to explain. We come out of that experience and try to bring some words appropriating this experience, something like that. So let us not try to understand it through the words, even if we do it for a short time, no? And once we get that, is that clear? Mental chanting, knowingly chanting, and the knowing entity, and we become aware of the knowing entity as well as the chanting entity. The chanting entity directs its attention toward the knowing entity, and then the fusion takes place.
The chanter and the chanting becomes one.
So the next sloga explains about the experience we have, something. He says, Sukham Atyantikam Yattad Buddhigrahyam Atindriyam Veti Yatrana Chaivayam Stitaschalati Tattvataha. When one feels that infinite bliss, which is perceived by the purified intellect and which transcends the senses and established wherein one never departs from one's real state. Sukham Atyantikam Yat Tat Buddhigrahyam Atindriyam. Supreme happiness. आत्यंतिक सुखम. क्या हुआ? Yeah. So that stage. So we have to read the two slokas together. This 19 and 20. I think that gives us the direction, no? It gives us some more clarity. However much we try to express, it will be faulty, but still we will try, no? Because there are two entities. So from the thought level, it can be put like this: the chanting entity becomes aware of the witnessing entity, and the moment the chanting entity becomes aware of it, the chanting stops. Let us see what Papa says about this state. By concentrating your mind on the sound of the name, the mind absorbs the name, and thereafter mental repetition starts. But it is very difficult where there are external disturbances. It needs perfect solitude. When Ramnam is repeated mentally, the mind becomes gradually still. And the repetition stops when the mind is perfectly still. It does not remain still for a long time, and the moment it is disturbed, the repetition of Ramnam starts again. The effort now is to lengthen the period of the stillness. From the time Ramnam stopped till it started again. By constant practice, the duration of the stillness is increased until at last it becomes permanent. So this should be far better, because we are comfortable with Ram now. So mentally, sorry, knowingly chanting means we hear the sound, We hear the sound of the Ram Nam, not the outer sound, inner sound. Because when mental chanting takes place, no outer sound comes. But we can hear our chanting. So by concentrating on the sound, that means the mind is not going anywhere else, accepting on the chanting. And the moment it turns towards that awareness, the chanting gets stopped. The other day we were sharing, early morning when we go for a walk, we look at a tree. Immediately in our mind the tree comes. We try to remember tree is a label pasted on that creation. Suppose we remove that label, because even before the label, the tree was there, no? I mean the existence was there. It is all of us can try this. Even if we are staying in cities, suppose we go to the park and look at a tree or a plant or something, immediately the mind puts a label. We have understood it from schools, and our mind immediately the labeling takes place. Perceiving and labeling simultaneously takes place. Seeing and labeling simultaneously takes place. But now let us try to remove that label. Because now we know that even before the labeling, even before the language came, the existence was there. So the language which we learned, because in school we were taught, no, A for apple, B for something like that, no? So that gets imprinted in our heart. So that is why automatically looking at that we immediately say it is a tree. We start from the labeling, the labeled state. But there is a state that exists even before the labeling. When that takes place, what happens one can know by itself. It's a wonderful, verifiable example. It is not an example that is thrust on us. We can see for ourselves what happens in us. Later on, we will also find that when we look at a person, the same leveling takes place. And suppose we try to remove the labeling, it's the toughest job, because the seeing and labeling simultaneously takes place. So a lot of practice is necessary. We cannot take the label out easily. The moment we see an object, the label is based on it. We do not even think that the label is pasted on it. We start from that label, Beautiful tree, short tree, good tree, bad tree, so many things. But before the labeling was there was an existence, an unnamed, unclassified existence. What happens to us when we become aware? It may be a difficult thing, but we feel we should try. We should try. Because that will help us to go beyond the labeled me and mine. No? The me and mine is also a labeled entity. That is why when we start going within to understand this me and mine, there won't be anything. It is compared to peeling out the onion, outer layers of the onion. When we keep on removing it, ultimately there is zero. But when we see as an onion, there is a feeling. It is called onion. We name it as an object. So in that way, it will help us. So let us try that, no? So that stage, what is that stage? That is described here as Sukham Atyandikam. Yadu Tad Buddhigrahyam Atindriyam. Sense organs cannot grasp it. Sense organs can grasp it only with the help of a labeling. Is it not? Think about it. It is a very, very profound, deep. When the buddhi can grasp that wonderful joy that comes from the contact with the Atman, the joy is buddhigrahyam and atindriyam. The sense organs can never go there. Their power is very, very limited. Every scientist asks, what is the speed of the nerve impulse? The sense organs work through the nervous system, and the speed of the nerve impulse will determine how much the senses can do. Hardly some 200 kilometers per hour is the speed of a nerve impulse. How ordinary it is, how can it penetrate into the truth of things? So atindriyam is constantly emphasized. The higher experience is beyond the sensory nervous system. So the sensory system has no value there. When you sit in meditation, you say goodbye to the sensory system. They stay outside, they don't function here. That kind of attitude you have to take toward the sensory system, not for its own sake, but to go higher, to penetrate deeper. Even in physical science, you have to go deeper very often, so that nature can reveal her mystery. So here it is very clear. Looking at a labeled object like tree and trying to see what was it prior to the labeling. That is why in Upanishads, because Papa has also given a few words. When the mind ceases to be, then you realize you are the Atman. Look without seeing, hear without listening, eat without tasting. That is the thing you have to attain. At the moment, it will be very difficult for all of us to understand it. But since he has prompted us to go through this sixth chapter, we can make a trial. This was taken from some Upanishads. Very difficult for us to grasp. There elaborately it is explained. In Brihadaranya Upanishad, sage Yajnavalkya explained to Janaka, the man who, in union with the self, sees without seeing, smells without smelling, tastes without tasting, speaks without speaking, hears without hearing, touches without touching, thinks without thinking, knows without knowing, for there is nothing separate from him. This state of not having another is the state of unity, one without a second, and that is the world of Brahman. That is the supreme goal of life, the supreme treasure, the supreme joy. In other words, we can say one who has realized is not dependent on the sense organs and the mind, for they are the causes of duality, the seer and the seen. He is himself is the knowledge. So when he says sukham atyantikam, buddhigrahyam atindriyam, though it is the toughest, this method we can try if it suits. Or if we are choosing the devotional aspect, we need not break our head with that. But we feel it would be better if we combine, no? Because none of us have developed that level of devotion where we try to bring him into the picture. Then there is no problem. He is behind this very word. If that is there, no problem. But because we do not have that, at the same time our intellect is very active. We have to combine the knowledge and bhakti and then try. So that is why Papa himself has brought out these in one of his, when the mind ceases to be, then you realize you are the Atman. Look without seeing, hear without listening, eat without tasting. This is the thing you have to attain. So from this we can understand that he was combining both the jnana and bhakti path. So when we go out for our morning walk, when we look at the tree, we, instead of looking at the tree from the tree level, we are trying to see the tree from the pre-labeling state. Before we were taught language, before we were taught to identify an object through a labeling, we don't know how far that is correct. Now what wells up in our mind is, we happen to see a video of, what is his name? Baba's Amte, who had set up Anandavan in Maharashtra, where the rehabilitation center for people who are afflicted with leprosy. He went there, started this, transformed the whole society, Wonderful. There, we happen to see a video where his grandson or some grandson, must be a grandson. He also has a wildlife sanctuary. All animals, normally we don't think of it. So there, the grandson was holding a snake. The grandson was talking with something else. They absolutely no fear. Grandson, mind you. We are now putting two and two together. Because the fear is an interpretation of the mind. Luckily, probably Baba Amteji thought we will not corrupt the mind with anything. So both the creatures, both the snake as well as the child, free. It must be available in YouTube. Everybody can try that. It must be available. Somebody sent it to us. We were also having it. Baba Amte's Something, it is not a fiction, myth. It is a reality. How does the child handle the so-called venomous, even some other animals also? So how does it happen? You can try to locate that now. Baba Amte's because it is something, in this context it becomes somewhat clear.
Swamiji,
Ah,
this picture has come. We are seeing
ah,
Baba Amte's movie has come. And
movie,
we have
movie,
thousands.
movie.
We have seen.
Ah,
Yes, Swamiji.
yeah.
It was in Marathi. It was in Marathi. We have seen.
See, yeah. Holding.
Very nice.
Correct.
नागपुर से 350 किलोमीटर दूर महाराष्ट्र के इंटीरियर्स में है हेमल कासा गांव। सुना इस छोटे से गांव में एक बहुत बड़ी जॉइंट फैमिली रहती है, इतनी बड़ी कि उसमें करीब 90 बच्चे हैं और बच्चों की पॉपुलेशन लगातार बढ़ती ही जा रही है। यार मुझे तो इनके डेरिंगबाज मम्मी पापा से मिलना है, कैसे कर लेते हैं ये सब?
He is Baba Amte's son.
सो स्वीट। अरे आप चौंक क्यों गए? यही तो है पापा मम्मी, डॉक्टर प्रकाश और मंदाकिनी आमटे। हेमल कासा में 50 एकड़ की जमीन पर बसा है ये आमटेज एनिमल आर्क। वो आर्क जो है जंगली जानवरों के बच्चों का पिछले 45 सालों से घर, उनके खाने पीने से लेकर उनकी देखभाल आमटे फैमिली ही करती है।
This is bear.
लेकिन अगर आप सोच रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे सिर्फ हिरन और मोर जैसे हार्मलेस वाइल्ड एनिमल्स रहते हैं, तो आप इन लकड़बग्गा महाशय के बारे में क्या कहेंगे? इस परिवार को तो इस खुकार से भी डर नहीं लगता।
तो लोग कहते हैं बच्चों को हमारे चाहिए, अगर हम नाती आएगा अंदर तो उसके साथ भी कहते हैं अरना ये वैसे तो बहुत डेंजरस होता है, बहुत मतलब क्रूर होता है, तो लोग कहते हैं।
That is what people say, he says, hyena, leopards.
ये क्या कर रहे हैं आमटे जी? यार इनको तो जरा भी डर नहीं लगता।
तो दूर से पता चला लेकिन खून नहीं आया, खून नहीं आने ये देखो, जैसे आपने फैमिली का समझता है मुझे, उसके फैमिली का तो आपस में जैसे खेलते हैं वो वैसे मेरे से खेल रहे हैं।
वाओ, मैंने सुना जरूर था कि प्यार में बहुत ताकत होती है, लेकिन प्यार से जंगली जानवर फैमिली मेंबर बन जाते हैं, ये पहली बार देख रहा हूँ। लेकिन क्या सारे जानवरों पर भी ये रूल अप्लाई करता है? What about खूंखार तेंदुआ माँ? यहाँ तो तेंदुआ ऐसे गले मिल रहा है जैसे मेले में बिछड़ा हुआ भाई हो।
तेंदुआ वाला डिस्ट्रिक्ट वाला चक्कर वाले मगरमच्छ,
Crocodile, you see? Now the,
सारे इतने प्यार से रहे यहाँ पर। मैं जिंदा हूँ, ये इसका खुद भी है, मैंने कभी उसको ट्रेनिंग नहीं दिया।
and I have never trained, that's what he says.
ज्यादा है या compassion? लेकिन उनकी रग रग में अपने पिता के संस्कार जरूर हैं। एक्चुअली डॉक्टर प्रकाश आमटे के फादर मशहूर सोशल वर्कर मुरलीधर देवीदास जी यानी बाबा आमटे की बड़ी इच्छा थी कि हेमल कासा के गांव वालों के लिए कुछ किया जाए। फिर एक दिन डॉक्टर प्रकाश और उनकी पत्नी के साथ एक ऐसा कि वो पूरी लाइफ यही हेमल कासा में से 2 बच्चे थे, अब दर्ज आदमी का है। इनकी
मेरी पोती जब से 6 महीने, वो तो बड़ी मजे से वो
Yeah.
गले में लेती थी।
This is what exactly.
लकड़बग्गा जो बच्चों को खाता है ऐसे बोलते हैं, तो उसके साथ भी वो बड़े प्यार से खेलती है। सब जानवरों से लगा।
यार कहना पड़ेगा
Anyhow,
आमटे फैमिली ने
family
ना ही सिर्फ
made
जंगली
us to
जानवरों
remember
को प्यार
this.
की भाषा सिखाई है, बल्कि
So-
इंडिया के लिए इंसान
All of you can go and see, those who have not seen. Baba Amte, what is that? Animal Park. Wild Animal Park, no? Something. Eh? That is his son. But it's called as Baba Amte Park. Eh?
Animal art.
Animal?
Yes. Yes.
You can check up. The moment you put Baba Amte Animal Park, when you get this, so we find there the child takes the it handles the hyena and leopard, crocodile, a serpent, everything. We cannot do it because in our mind, the moment we see it, there is a label patient. Right from our childhood, we have been told, and it comes out in the form of a fear in us. That labeling. Don't go near that. No, that is enough. That it gets stamped in our heart. But whereas Baba Amte's son thought, we will not corrupt the mind of the children. And then he was able to see it. That is why the video came. It is not a cock and bull story, it's a video. And he answers. Of course, it is in Hindi, Hindi or Marathi? Hindi. So somebody asks, and he immediately replies. So from this we learn that if we go beyond the labeling, we become one with it. There is no fear, no otherness. That is the state probably the Upanishads and Papa is telling us. When the mind ceases to be, then you realize you are the Atman. Look without seeing. Think about it. So then only this chapter, this sloga will become clear to us.
Baba Amte's wife was a doctor, Swamiji.
Correct.
After marriage, she became doctor.
Very great soul in rehabilitation of people who are affected with leprosy. So we were directed to it because of the words of Papa, and which we never knew that it was from an Upanishad. Later on, when he directed us mysteriously to this particular sloga in Brihadaranya Upanishad, then it was revealed, this is what Papa wanted us to convey, wanted us to know. The man who in union with the self sees without seeing all these dualities, For there is nothing separate from him. This state of not having another is the state of unity, one without a second, and that is the world of Brahman. That is the supreme goal of life, the supreme treasure, the supreme joy. In other words, we can say one who has realized is not dependent on the sense organs of the mind. So in this sloga, he says, the higher experience is beyond the sensory and nervous system. So the sensory system has no value here. Seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, everything is sensory. The sensory system has no value. When you sit in meditation, you say goodbye to the sensory system. They stay outside, they don't function here. That kind of attitude you have to take toward the sensory system. No, not for its own sake, but to go higher, to penetrate deeper. Therefore, buddhigrahyam atindriyam. Enlightened reason plays a role because nearest to the Atman is buddhi. It is extremely subtle, and when it is properly trained, it develops a high penetrating power. That is the language used in the Upanishads. Any energy can be made capable of deep penetration by giving proper training. Take radiation. You give it a training, high frequency training, then it becomes highly penetrating as an X-ray, though by itself it was very flimsy radiation. Just a ray of laser can make high frequency radiation with the capacity to penetrate into the heart of things. That state applied to the buddhi is called buddhigrahyam. That buddhi can capture this truth of the infinite joy coming from the realization of the Atman. It may be difficult to understand from the superficial level. So this much we can understand. We try, we experiment, when we go for a morning walk, to look at a tree or a mountain or a lake, and we try to remove the labeling. How it can be done, each one has to try. Each one has to try. Because the trouble is, right from we started knowing ourselves, this seeing and labeling takes place simultaneously. But we intellectually now understand that the labeling came out when we paced through the language, So before the language, when there was no language, what was it? It might give us some clue.
Swamiji,
Ah,
it means we must go to the source.
correct. Correct. Because they say that when the labeling is removed, the seer and the seen is not there. So that's what it says, In other words, one who has realized is not dependent on the sense organs and mind, for they are the cause of duality, the seer and the seen. He is himself is the knowledge. So if we read and try to understand through the intellect, we may fail. But we should try to experiment it. Something nearest to that experience, Eckhart Tolle has said, that when the seer and the seen is not there, that state has been beautifully described as consciousness is looking at its creation. Consciousness is looking at its creation. The sense of individuality is not there. Just imagine 5,000 years, 6,000 years ago, people who have dug deep into this came out in the form of Upanishads, and they declared then this state of not having another is the state of unity, one without a second, and that is the world of Brahman. This is the supreme goal of life, the supreme treasure, the supreme joy. Because now we understand now that the labeling takes us away from the all-pervading reality. We get stuck with this label and we see it as other than us. There should be an effort on our part as a spiritual aspirant to know the reality and come back here, not to stay there, to come back. So to know that, we have to do something by which, we try to remove the labeling and see what happens, and then come out and then look at the same creation. That is what the seers did. And they revealed to us. It is very subtle, no doubt, very difficult. You just imagine, Papa did not go there anywhere to study anything, But he revealed the same word, what we see in Upanishads. So that means his penetrating mind was trying to capture this Sukham Atyantikam, this state, And two things he said: eat without tasting, look without seeing. hear without listening. Only these three he said. But when we go to the Upanishads, we find all these. The man who in union with the self sees without seeing, smells without smelling, tastes without tasting, speaks without speaking, hears without hearing, touches without touching, thinks without thinking, knows without knowing. Why? Because there is nothing separate from him. The seer and the seen is not there. So to understand this particular sloga, all these explanations will help us. Sloga number, you can try. Sloga number 21. Sukham atyantikam yad tat buddhigrahyam atindriyam veti yatrana chaivayam stitaschalati tattvataha. When one feels that infinite bliss, which is perceived by the purified intellect, and which transcends the senses. Purely this is Upanishadic word. And established wherein one never departs from one's real state. Sthita chalati tattvataha. Sukham atyantikam yad tat buddhigrahyam atindriyam veti yatrana chaivayam stitaschalati tattvataha. We cannot just simply read and go. We cannot feel satisfied with the explanation given by saints, because this explanation comes only because they have dug deep into it. I think that is enough today because it is a very deep subject. So he says this idea comes from the Kathopanishad. This Atman is present in all beings, but it is lying hidden. Will it always remain hidden? No. We can discover it. Drishyate. It is seen. How? When the ordinary buddhi becomes concentrated, one-pointed, that is the nature of that expression. How do you get it? By training the buddhi in dealing with subtle, more subtle, still more subtle realities. And the buddhi finally gets the capacity to realize the subtlest reality, the Atman. Sukshma buddhi is capable of realizing the subtle, and the Sthula buddhi is capable of realizing only the gross. By those who have trained themselves to perceive subtle and subtler truths, such people are called Sukshmadarshis. So a Sukshmadarshi can realize the Atman by his or her Sukshma Buddhi, and one becomes a Sukshmadarshi because of his or her one-pointed mind. Let us make the mind as pointed as possible. That is the nature of the training of the human mind. So in that context, the Upanishads have said, Drishyate. It can be realized not by the senses, not by the manas. Buddhi is pure reason, as we call it in the modern language, but it is the purest of the psychic energy that you have. Psychic energies means all energies in you. You go on training them, making it a little better, then it becomes a mind, making it still better, it becomes the buddhi. From the same energy, namely that psychic force, the buddhi must be developed. Earlier in the Gita, Krishna had said so many times, develop buddhi, buddhi yoga. Develop buddhi. Through education, you develop the buddhi which can discriminate between the real and the unreal, penetrate into the heart of things. That is called buddhi. So, veti yatra. When one realizes this, in that state, one will know the truth. And then, nachayavayam stitaschalati tattvataha. One never falls down from the state of that truth. Nachalati. Does not fall down. It is fixed on that. That is the state absolutely steady. So today, Papa has given some more points for us to probe deep into it. And with the words of Papa, it is very difficult, agreed, but still it is not impossible. All of us can try. Okay. Hari Om. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Rama. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Rama.